Thanks, Alistair. So I guess, first of all, why are we talking about medical incidents at a finance conference? Let's have a look and see. Actually, there's quite a few medical incidents that happen on board aircraft during flights. You can see from the numbers there, they're fairly significant. There's a range of different medical conditions. These are some of the most popular conditions, well, not popular, but most common conditions that can occur during a flight. And these are taken from statistics. One of the issues is that we never know where these events are going to occur. Which flights will these incidents happen on? Where will the aircraft be when these incidents take place? And what do the symptoms presented indicate? So how do you know whether or not chest pain is a result of something that's cardiac related, or if it's something far less serious, such as anxiety or indigestion? Managing a medical incident is really critical. So managing an incident at altitude correctly can really make a difference between life and death. There are certain factors that it's really important to be able to control, to be able to do that effectively. The severity of the medical condition, to be able to determine that is number one. Prompt diagnosis to determine what that condition is. Informed medical assistance, so once you know what the condition is, to be able to get the right type of assistance to the passenger. And then to have available medication and equipment on board to be able to deal with whatever the incident is. Ground resource guidance can be very helpful as well, even if you have a doctor on board the aircraft. It's been shown that to have assistance from the ground in these situations where you're experiencing a medical event in a compromised situation, such as at altitude, can be very helpful. And time is something that's really critical as well. In the medical world, we talk about the golden hour. So there's a really short amount of time in which you're able to do certain things in the event of a medical situation that can really affect the outcome of that passenger. So speed is really, really important. Accurate and prompt diagnosis of the condition of the passenger can be absolutely critical. Administration of the right medication as quickly as possible, again, very critical. And then providing the right level of care as well. These three things can really impact the recovery rate and survival of the passenger, depending obviously on the event in question. So with all of that, you'd think that people would be quite concerned about being in a tube in the sky at altitude with very little resource, but actually they're not, certainly in business aviation. And these are some of the reasons why people don't bother with medical assistance or medical support at altitude. So there's some popular arguments against. One of them is age and health. Another one is cost. And then this is one of my favourite ones, which is that nothing's ever happened to date, so we'll probably be okay because it's never happened to us before, so we'll be fine. We'll just take a chance, if you will. More popular arguments against from some of the people that fly the plane, some of the pilots, well, I'll just land the aircraft. We have a doctor on board. Or we don't fly very often, or this is also quite popular. It's just not a priority. We think there's some value in it, but actually it's just not a priority. We've got a lot of other things that we're very busy dealing with. So these are some of the annoying facts against some of those reasons. Medical incidents can happen anywhere. I've got some case studies that I'll show you in a second which will confirm that. They happen to fit and young people as well as elderly people. Luck's not a reliable measure of probability. That's fairly obvious, but if things have been going well, then it's quite easy just to, I suppose, hope that it will continue. Cost isn't just measured in terms of finance. Things like insurance, medical support, they do come at a price, but there's an even greater price that has to be paid sometimes if you decide to maybe not to make that investment. Unscheduled landings, these can be problematic. There's a great deal of different factors to take into account when you land an aircraft in an unscheduled airport. Doctors are qualified to different levels, so you may have a doctor on board, but they may not be qualified to be able to deal with the incident at hand. That's nothing against the doctor per se, but different doctors are qualified to different levels. Medical incidents can happen anywhere. I think we all should know that. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it can also be a terrible thing because it can never change something that's already happened. So here are just a couple of case studies. Case study number 1, this is one of the sad case study. This was a large US corporation. They were on a transatlantic flight with their president. They had no medical resources whatsoever. They had a medical incident, and sadly, even though the plane was diverted successfully, the passenger was deceased on arrival. So this was something that was in the press. We've been given permission to mention the company. I don't think it's appropriate to do so here, but I'm happy to discuss it in further detail with anyone who is interested. But suffice to say, they now have equipment on all of their aircraft. They're now fully equipped with medical devices, even telemedicine, and they have ground resource capabilities as well. Case study number 2, this was or is a client in the medical arena, so they travel frequently with their own doctors on board. This was a particular flight where a passenger became ill. The doctors on board chose to take charge, but they chose not to use any of the resources that they had on board. So they didn't use the ground resource that they had, which on this occasion was Medlink. They didn't use any of the items in the medical kits because they felt that they were equipped to be able to understand what was happening with the passenger, and that they would be able to give the best level of care. This didn't prove to be the case. When the aircraft landed, it was met by a golf cart and not by a proper emergency response unit. The passenger did survive, but his condition was compromised as a result of the delay in getting the right medication and treatment to him. Case study number 3. This is just to show that these kind of incidents can happen anywhere. This was with a client who's fully equipped with all items of medical support, including ground resource. They were actually on the ground when this took place, and it was a crew member who said that she was feeling faint, she was feeling dizzy. They appropriately, correctly contacted and used all the resources available to them. They contacted the Medical Resource Centre, they described the condition, they sent telemedicine images, even from the ground. It was determined that she was suffering with a possible stroke, but because this information was relayed so quickly, she was able to get the right treatment and the right attention straight away. She was taken to the right facility, even though it wasn't the closest hospital. It was actually the hospital that was best equipped to be able to manage her condition. And she made a full recovery, and it was a direct result of the speed with which the incident was managed using the resources. So, available resources. So actually there's a lot of available resources in the medical spectrum for aviation. And some business jets do have this equipment on board, and a lot of commercial airlines as well, which is good for all of you as passengers. So ground response, we have aviation medicine trained specialist physicians who are trained not just to deal with medical emergencies, but to deal with medical emergencies that present symptoms which can differ when you're at altitude. So things change in the body at altitude, and they're trained to be able to notice these kind of things and to advise how to manage them. They're available 24/7, ground or air. There's a huge global reach. They speak multiple languages, and they understand all the different cultural aspects. So there's different centres that this information can be transported to around the world. The provision of data can really assist the pilots greatly as well with that really important decision as to whether or not they have to divert the aircraft, and it helps them to manage that decision with the best quality information that's available. There's assistance on arrival as well, so the aircraft, once diverted, can be met by the right type of assistance that's going to best help the passengers, whatever the condition they have. And there's also crew support as well. So this isn't just about your passengers, it's also about your crew as well. Medical kits, there's a full range of medical kits. There's no requirement to have a medical kit on board your aircraft, but I would strongly recommend that at least you speak to your clients about the fact that this kind of equipment's available. First aid kits, just basic supplies, and then emergency medical kits which have prescription medicine and can actually be tailored to a condition that a client may have. So if you know that your client's got a particular condition, the kits can be equipped with equipment that can help to manage that condition. Bespoke medical kits, I just said that one. And then AEDs, so defibrillators. It amazes me that anyone would ever get onto an aircraft without one of these being on board, because if you're at 30, 40,000 feet and you have a heart attack and it's a fibrillation issue, unless you have a defibrillator on board, that's it. There's really nothing else that's going to help you. And then telemedicine. So as technology evolves, we have some really cool equipment that can really help to enhance all of these things that are readily available to you, the ground resource and the medical kits. So telemedicine transmits in real time live data which can show a physician on the ground exactly what's going on with a passenger. This includes a 12-lead ECG, which is the only thing that can determine whether or not that chest pain is cardiac related or whether it's just something anxiety driven, which a lot of the time it is. So it increases the doctor's effectiveness of being able to deal with the emergency. If you don't have a telemedicine device on board, what you're having to rely on is the crew accurately trying to explain over some kind of phone system what's happening verbally or by text to a doctor on the ground. It's much easier to be able to do this all by data transmission, and you can also transmit video and imaging as well. Additional parameters, so ECGs aren't typically available on their own. Capnometry as well, which is a measure of respiration and also toxicity in the body as well, which can be helpful from things like DVTs. And it kind of emits that room for error. So everything's recorded on the ground. So if there's any kind of issue with what happened in flight after the event, then from litigation purposes, there's proof and a full audit trail of what happened and what took place on the flight, which can be very helpful. So, to bother or not to bother, just in summary, medical incidents do and will occur in the air and on the ground. Age isn't a limiting factor. History is irrelevant, so what happened in the past doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way in the future. Time is critical, so if anything happens, there's a medical emergency. If something happened here now, we'd call someone, they'd be here in a relatively short period of time. When you're up in the air, that's a lot more difficult to achieve. And then landing the aircraft, that just might not be enough. So there are a lot of resources as well available to you. You don't have to have them all, and in fact, obviously it's not going to be anyone in this room's decision, but all that I would suggest respectfully is that when you're talking to your clients, you let them know that this kind of equipment is available. It's there for their use, should they wish to take advantage of it, and that's really all you can do. It's just covering a duty of care by letting them know these things are available. And yeah, hindsight can be a really terrible thing, as that first case study showed us. That's me done. Thank you.
We've got a question from the audience. Are there any insurance or other cost savings if you have a telemedicine device on your aircraft?
That's a really great question, and it's something that I'd love to talk to insurance companies about, because I really feel that there should be some kind of it should be something that makes a difference to the insurance, because landing an aircraft when you're not expecting to, that can come with challenges. We've had incidents, admittedly in commercial aviation, where an aircraft of a particular size has had to land in an airport that isn't really suitable for it, and the aircraft's been damaged on landing, things like fuel costs. So I really feel that there's a potential there, but yeah, I've never, if anyone knows an insurance company that'd like to talk to me, then I'm here.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks.